Pat was born in 1952 in West Orange, New Jersey. She grew up next door to a cemetery and has distinct memories of watching funerals from her bedroom window. She attended Catholic school through her first 2 years of college and retains a great fondness of the incense and imagery for the Catholic Church. She attended school at Our Lady of Lourdes.
You stopped?
Pat went on to study at Newton College of the Sacred Heart from 1970 to 1972 in Newton, Massachusetts. Pat did not always want to be an art therapist. She went to college thinking that she wanted to be a lawyer and study government. She was very interested in systems and how they work and affect people's lives. After signing up for a bunch of related classes in her first semester, she ended up dropping all of it and signed up for art classes. She had no experience and no reason to think she would be good at art. She describes it as both astonishing and terrifying. After 2 years, she transferred to an art school, the Boston Museum School of Fine Arts. She started there in 1972. She reflected that looking back, it amazed her that she was able to do this. She doesn't know where the courage came from. While there, she realized that the isolation of being an artist did not feel right to her. She discovered Margaret Naumburg's books in the Boston Public Library just by accident. It turned out Pat had recently retired to Boston. Pat got in touch with her and she began mentoring her. Her support that Pat was meant to be an art therapist was very important in her path to going the way she did. With that, she was able to graduate with her BFA in 1976 from the School of Fine Arts, which operates under Tufts University in Medford, Massachusetts. She then went to Goddard College in Plainfield, Vermont, graduating with her MA in 1977. Finally, she got her PhD in 1986 from Union University in Cincinnati, Ohio. During her college years, Pat's interest in Judaism led her to convert to that faith in 1979. After marrying, She and her husband, John, traveled to Israel, where they lived in Kibbutz Ein Gedi for 6 months. Pat perfected the art of leaving her body at an early age, a skill she employed regularly in adolescence in lieu of access to more conventional means of altering consciousness. Pat became adept at traveling into the space where all images reside, what C.J. Jung calls the collective unconscious. The collective unconscious is a concept originally defined by psychoanalyst Carl Jung and sometimes is called the objective psyche. It refers to the idea that a segment of the deepest unconscious mind is genetically inherited and is not shaped by personal experience. In the collective unconscious, true art is something supernatural, a force that has escaped from the limitations of the personal and has soared beyond the personal concerns of its creator. For great artists, this art impulse can be all-consuming. Pat Allen calls this the creative source. Pat's most important discovery, and where she differs from many art therapists, is that she believes the most important relationship is of the individual and their deepest self. And that relationship can take place very well through art making. In other words, when she makes art, she is communicating quite literally with her own soul through the image. The soul can speak back to her, guide her, and affirm her. Eventually, art making became Pat's preferred path back and forth between the spiritual and material worlds. The spiritual path that she follows is why she left art therapy to create community art studios.
Starting the Open Studio Project in Chicago in 1995 was to collaborate with others in creating a space where people could make art and sort of figure out why they are here. What is their means of, what are they called? To what are they to be in service? And I think that making art, and particularly making art in a spontaneous way and being helped by writing, we developed a process by which people could figure that stuff out. Like, what am I called to? What am I here for? What are the either images or practices or areas of working that I'm meant to be here creatively to have an impact on?
Pat had lived for many years with her family in Oak Park, Illinois. There she founded 2 community art studios where she led them for 10 years.
Channeled was a process by which people could autonomously claim their creative process in the company of others and have support in doing that, but without someone serving in the role as a therapist. So the way that manifested is something that we called the Open Studio process.
She realized that art therapy was not for her. Even though she was in the profession for 25 years.
After about 20 years as an art therapist, I found myself working my way through all the objections that I had to art therapy, which is that, this quote-unquote patient needs a quote-unquote therapist to quote-unquote heal themselves, and I decided that I didn't believe that was the case. So in the studio, we started really it was a laboratory to we kind of worked through all of the basic underlying premises of art therapy and rejected them one by one.
Wow.
And which was challenging because we were in that world. I was teaching in an art therapy program, practicing as an art therapist, so that was very challenging, very lonely, because not a lot of support, certainly. The field was trying to become something, and I was a bit of a gadfly.
Through the studio, she was able to help people collaborate and talk about their own art. What she wanted to do was create a space where the artist in each person could show up. While she is no longer involved in the project, it is still up and running in Evanston, Illinois. Their goal is to make art and be of service. She then started up Studio Parts in Oak Park, focusing more on the spiritual aspect of making art. She was connecting with the source of art making, but also began to focus on collaborating within her own community. During this time, art making began to feel like something was missing. She began to need to find a place where she can open the door and experience nature's creation. The collaboration that she needed to be in service with the source was collaboration with nature as well as the creative project with the source. The creative process for her consists of getting quiet, concentrating on breathing, and figuring out the intention that she wants to arrive. A big part of her attention is to be in service to the source, but it is also to make art, relax, explore color, command a portrait of someone she loves, or just to play. After the art is made, she goes into the harvest, which is a time and space for her to witness to her own art. The source to her speaks and feels in images. While they still maintain a presence in Oak Park, the center of gravity has shifted to a home in Ojai, California. For the last 15 years, she has been doing work under the radar, not so much in a social way, which has really been a retreat. She lives there with her family, and it has been a way to figure out what is next. Pat's research in co-creating with nature via the studio process takes place on their property in the nearby foothills of the Los Padres Mountains. Through this retreat, she has been able to continually communicate with her creative source as well as collaborate with nature. Pat and her daughter, Adina, also collaborate on creative projects. This has been including combining the studio process that Pat created with the Jewish text study method of Shavruta. Adina is a Jewish rabbi, and so their first endeavor was studying the text of Shema, the book of Exodus, with the intention of surfacing the untold stories of the woman characters. Adina is actively teaching the studio process in many Jewish educational venues as a means to generate a new commentary on traditional sacred texts. I got in contact with Pat, and she gave me more insight as to what she wished she knew earlier. She wished she knew the contributions of early art therapists of color, like Lucille Venture, Georgette Powell, and Cliff Josephs. They had a social awareness that was missing from mainstream art therapy. This was a direction she was very interested in. If Pat could give any advice to an undergrad, she would say to worry less about theory and book learning. Instead, spend your time exploring art therapy in every way. Visual art, music, movement, writing, guided by an intention to know your deepest self. Keep track of your learning in a journal. This kind of self-inquiry